Daeho Kim could not stop his hands from shaking. He stood on the bridge of the UHSS Harmony, watching the stars through the window. This was the biggest moment of his life. Today, humans would meet the galactic sovereignty for the first time. The sovereignty ruled 43 different alien species across the galaxy. They had advanced technology that made human ships look like old toys. They had been traveling between stars for 12,000 years. Humans had only been in space for a few hundred years. Daeho was the ambassador. It was his job to make sure this meeting went well. One wrong word could mean war. One mistake could destroy humanity. Commander Yuna Park stood beside him. She was a military officer with 17 years of experience. She had met many isolated human colonies before, but never aliens. Her face was calm, but Daeho could see the worry in her eyes. Dr. Taeyang Choi was also there. He was a scientist who studied alien life. He had spent his whole career preparing for this day. He carried a tablet full of information about human culture and history. Suddenly, space itself seemed to tear open. A massive ship appeared out of nowhere. It was 3 kilometers long, covered in weapons and strange technology. The Sovereignty dreadnought made the Harmony look tiny. A message came through. The aliens wanted to board the human ship. Daeho took a deep breath and agreed. The delegation arrived in the main conference room. High Arbiter Velkanos led them. He was a Valthorian, tall and thin with pale skin that seemed to glow. His species lived for thousands of years and never got sick. He looked at the humans like a scientist studying insects. With him came Rishka from the Ken Collective. She was not one person, but 17 bodies moving together as one mind. They surrounded the table like a living wall. Mordax was there too. He was a Kralith warrior, massive and covered in thick armor-like skin. His species had conquered 47 worlds before joining the Sovereignty. Even he seemed nervous in the conference room. The last delegate was Sylvan, a being made of living crystal. Light passed through his body in strange patterns. He communicated through sounds that needed special machines to translate. The meeting started well. Daeho showed images of Earth. He talked about human art and music. He explained how humans had spread to 17 star systems peacefully. He was careful not to mention weapons or military strength. The aliens listened politely. They asked questions about human technology and government. Everything was going according to plan. Then Bora ran into the room. She was a golden retriever, belonging to Captain Minho Lee. Somehow she had escaped from the crew quarters. She was excited about the new visitors. Her tail wagged as she bounded across the floor, tongue hanging out, completely happy. The alien delegation reacted immediately. All 17 of Rishka's bodies scrambled backward. Mordax, the huge warrior who had fought in countless battles, actually stumbled away from the table. Even Velkanos, who had lived for 3 centuries, showed fear on his face. Bora did not understand. She thought they were scared and wanted to help. She walked up to Sylvan and sat down politely, still wagging her tail. The crystalline being flashed colors that the translator said meant extreme distress. Daeho was confused. Yuna looked shocked. Dr. Choi tried to figure out what was wrong. Captain Minho rushed in and grabbed Bora's collar. He apologized over and over, but the aliens kept staring at the dog with wide eyes. Finally, Velkanos spoke. His voice was shaking. He asked what that creature was. Minho looked confused. He said it was just a dog, a pet. His friend. The translator struggled with the word pet. There was no word for it in most alien languages. Mordax pointed at Bora's teeth. He said those were the teeth of a hunter, a killer, an apex predator. Yuna tried to calm everyone down. She explained that dogs were friendly. They lived with humans. Millions of humans had dogs in their homes. They were family members. This made things worse. Rishka's 17 bodies all made sounds of panic. Velkanos stepped back further. Even through the translator, everyone could hear the fear in their voices. They asked more questions. How big can dogs get? Do they hunt? Do they kill? Are there other predators that humans keep? Dr. Choi tried to answer honestly. He explained that dogs came in many sizes. Some were tiny, but others were huge and very strong. Yes, they had hunting instincts, but they were trained and gentle. And yes, humans also kept cats, which were smaller but also predators. When he mentioned cats, Sylvan actually made a sound like breaking glass. Velkanos held up his hand. He said they needed to stop the meeting immediately. He sent an urgent message back to the Sovereignty Council. The message was marked as the highest priority. Before leaving, Velkanos turned to Deho. He asked a simple question. How many humans keep these predators in their homes? Deho checked his data. He said that about 67% of all human families had at least one pet. Many had more than one. The aliens left quickly. They practically ran back to their ship. The humans stood in the conference room, completely confused. Bora was very proud of herself. She thought she had made new friends. Mino petted her head and told her she was a good girl. But Yuna was worried. She had seen fear like that before, but never from warriors and diplomats. She had seen it in prey animals when predators came near. Deho sat down heavily in his chair. First contact with aliens had lasted less than an hour. It had ended because of a dog. Dr. Choi was already working on his tablet, trying to understand what went wrong. He pulled up information about the sovereignty species. He started reading about their homeworlds and evolution. Then he stopped. His face went pale. He said they had a big problem. Every single species in the galactic sovereignty had evolved from prey animals, herbivores, plant-eaters, creatures that ran from predators. None of them had ever seen a species that kept predators as friends. To them, it was like humans keeping tigers and wolves in their bedrooms. It was insane. Yuna understood now. The sovereignty did not see Bora as a pet. They saw her as a monster that humans somehow controlled. And if humans could control predators, what did that make humans? Daiho received a message. The sovereignty wanted to meet again in 3 days. But this time, they wanted to come to Earth. They wanted to see human society for themselves. They wanted to understand what kind of species kept apex predators in their homes and called them family. Bora lay down at Minho's feet, tired from all the excitement. She closed her eyes and went to sleep. She had no idea that she had just changed the course of human history. The humans looked at each other. They had so many questions. Would the sovereignty accept them? Would they be afraid of all humans now? What would happen when the aliens learned more about Earth? Deho made a decision. He would invite the aliens to his own home in Seoul. They would meet his family. They would see normal humans living normal lives with their pets. Maybe then the sovereignty would understand. Or maybe it would make everything worse. But they had to try. The future of humanity depended on it. The Galactic Sovereignty Council met for the first time in 4,000 years with all members present in person. Usually they sent holographic images to meetings. But this was too important for holograms. Velkanos stood before them all. He showed videos of Bora the dog. The council watched in horror as the golden retriever wagged her tail and sat politely. To them, she looked like a monster. He explained that this was not the only predator humans kept. There were hundreds of different types. Big dogs that could break bones with their jaws, small dogs that barked and bit, cats that hunted birds and mice for fun. Some humans even kept snakes and spiders. The council argued for hours. Some wanted to destroy humanity immediately. Others wanted to put humans in quarantine, isolated from the rest of the galaxy forever. A few said maybe humans could teach them something, but these voices were quickly silenced. Finally, they made a decision. They would send a research team to Earth. The team would observe humans and their predators. Then they would decide what to do about this dangerous species. The research team arrived 3 days later. Xenobiologist Corvin led them. He was from the Tech species, a careful scientist who normally studied dead planets. He looked at this mission as very dangerous but necessary. Security Chief Naxala came with him. She was a Dreth, a species whose ancestors had been hunted almost to extinction. Every part of her body told her to run away from Earth, but she had a job to do. Cultural observer Zena was also on the team. Her species communicated through smell, so human facial expressions confused her. She carried recording devices to capture everything they saw. Medical Officer Kelvin completed the team. His specialty was treating trauma. Everyone hoped they would not need his skills. Their first visit was to Seoul, to the home of Junho and Nari Kim. The couple lived in a normal apartment with their teenage daughter, Hana. Dr. Choi explained that this was a typical human family. The aliens put on protective suits before entering. Naxala insisted on this. She said if the predators attacked, the suits might give them a few extra seconds to escape. The door opened. Immediately, a large golden shape rushed toward them. Naxala screamed. It was another golden retriever named Taeyang, Bora's brother, but Taeyang did not attack. He sniffed them curiously, tail wagging. His mouth was open in what looked like a smile. Hana called him back and he obeyed immediately. The aliens entered slowly. They saw more predators inside. A tabby cat named Luna sat on the couch watching them with green eyes. A parrot named Apollo sat in a cage near the window. The bird made a sound like a door chime, which scared everyone. Corvin could not believe what he was seeing. The predators lived freely in the home. They were not in cages or chains. The cat jumped down and walked between people's legs. The dog lay on the floor near Hana's feet. Hana sat on the floor and hugged Taeyang. She buried her face in his fur. The dog was large enough to hurt her badly if he wanted to, but he just licked her face gently. Nari explained that Taeyang was Hana's therapy dog. When Hana felt anxious or scared, Taeyang helped her feel better. The dog could sense when she was upset and would stay close to her. This concept broke Naxala's mind. Humans used predators to help with emotions? They trusted these hunters with their children. It made no sense. Then Luna the cat jumped onto the table. She dropped a dead mouse in front of Junho. The human sighed and picked it up with a paper towel. He thanked the cat and threw the mouse away. Corvin asked what just happened. Yunyo explained that Luna sometimes caught mice and brought them as gifts. She was a hunter by nature, but she was also part of the family. The aliens stayed for 2 hours. They watched the family eat dinner. The dog sat beside the table, waiting patiently. Sometimes Hana gave him small pieces of food. The cat climbed onto Nari's lap and fell asleep while being petted. It was peaceful, normal, completely insane by sovereignty standards. The next day, Dr. Choi took them to a farm in the countryside. The farm belonged to Jiwon Park and his husband Hyunwoo. They raised sheep and chickens. The aliens were confused. Why would humans raise prey animals when they kept predators? The answer shocked them even more. Jiwon showed them his working dogs, 2 border collies named Storm and River. These dogs had a job. They protected the sheep from wild predators and helped move the sheep from place to place. The aliens watched as Storm ran toward a group of sheep. Naxala was sure the dog would attack them. She closed her eyes, not wanting to see the violence, but Storm did not attack. She ran around the sheep, guiding them gently into a pen. She barked softly, and the sheep moved where she wanted them to go. River helped from the other side. Together, the 2 predators managed the prey animals without hurting any of them. More than that, the dogs seemed to enjoy their work. Their tails wagged. They looked happy. When they finished, they ran back to Jiwon and Hyunwoo for praise and treats. Corvin asked to examine Storm. He wanted to understand this behavior. Storm sat patiently while Corvin scanned her with his equipment. The results showed something impossible. Storm genuinely loved Jiwon. This was not fear or training. The dog had bonded with the human emotionally. She wanted to make him happy. She felt proud when he praised her. Hyunwoo invited them for lunch. They ate outside while the dogs rested in the shade. The barn cats wandered around, hunting mice in the fields. The chickens walked freely and the dogs ignored them completely. Xena recorded everything. She knew the council would not believe this without evidence. Predators and prey living together peacefully. Predators protecting prey from other predators. Humans treating hunters as family members. The final stop was a veterinary hospital in Seoul. Dr. Seojin Yoon ran the hospital. It was enormous, with different sections for different animals. Hundreds of people brought their pets there every day. The aliens toured the facility. They saw emergency surgery on a dog that had been hit by a car. The owners waited outside, crying with worry. They saw sick cats getting medicine. They saw birds with broken wings being treated carefully. Dr. Yoon showed them the exotic animal section. Here humans kept even stranger pets, snakes, lizards, spiders. Each one was a predator in its own way. Each one was cared for with expensive equipment and expert knowledge. Naxala asked how much all this cost. Dr. Yoon laughed and said the pet care industry was worth billions of credits. Humans spent enormous amounts of money on their animals' health and happiness. Corvin asked the question that confused him most. Why did humans do all this? What did they gain from keeping predators? Dr. Yoon thought for a moment. Then she smiled and said something simple. Because the animals make us happy and we make them happy. Is that not enough? That night, back on their ship, the research team discussed what they had seen. Kelvin said the humans seemed mentally healthy. There was no sign of mass delusion or mind control. Zena said the emotional bonds were real. Humans genuinely loved their pets. The pets loved their humans back. It was not fake or forced. Corvin was already writing his report. He had discovered something that would change everything, but he needed more information first. He needed to understand where humans came from. He needed to study their history. Naxala could not sleep that night. She kept thinking about young Hana hugging Taeyang. The girl trusted that predator completely, and the predator had been so gentle with her. Maybe, just maybe, humans were not the monsters the sovereignty feared. Maybe they were something else entirely. Something the galaxy had never seen before. But that possibility scared Naxala even more than the alternative. Corvin could not sleep. He had returned to the sovereignty station orbiting Earth, but his mind would not rest. Something about humans did not make sense. How could they bond so deeply with predators? He decided to study human history. The humans had given the sovereignty access to their databases. Corvin started reading about Earth's past, about how humans evolved. What he discovered made his blood run cold. Humans were not just keeping predators as pets. Humans were predators themselves. Apex predators, the most successful hunters Earth had ever produced. The evidence was overwhelming. Human eyes faced forward, perfect for tracking prey. Their teeth could tear meat. They had evolved to hunt in groups, communicating and planning together. Most terrifying of all, they were persistence hunters. Persistence hunting meant humans chased their prey for days without stopping. They did not need to be faster. They just needed to keep going. Animals would run until they collapsed from exhaustion. Then the humans would catch them. Modern humans could still do this. Marathon runners regularly covered distances that would kill most sovereignty species. Human soldiers could march for days with heavy equipment. They could survive in deserts, mountains, jungles, and frozen wastelands. Corvin read about human history. Wars that lasted for years, battles where humans fought until they literally could not stand. Explorers who crossed oceans and climbed mountains just to see what was there. Humans did not give up. Ever. It was built into their nature. Suddenly, everything made sense. Humans could bond with wolves because they hunted the same way. They understood each other. Two predator species working together, becoming stronger. Over thousands of years, humans and wolves changed together. The wolves became dogs. The humans became civilization builders. But both kept their core nature. Corvin had to tell the council immediately. This changed everything. The emergency council meeting started within hours. Corvin presented his findings. He showed them human anatomy, human history, human evolution. He explained what persistence hunting meant. The council reacted with panic. They had thought humans were strange because they kept predators. Now they learned that humans were the predators. This had never happened before. Every spacefaring species in the galaxy had evolved from prey animals. Herbivores, scavengers, creatures that avoided conflict. Their entire civilization was built on prey species thinking. Their diplomacy was about avoiding war. Their technology focused on defense. Their culture valued caution and careful planning. These were all prey animal strategies. Humans were different. They approached problems aggressively. They took risks. They did not give up when things got hard. These were predator strategies. War Coordinator Thraxus stood up. His species, the Mechron, were considered the greatest warriors in the sovereignty, but even they were prey animals at heart. They fought defensively, using overwhelming firepower to scare away attackers. Thraxus said they needed to isolate humanity immediately, put them in quarantine for 1,000 years, keep them away from the rest of the galaxy until the sovereignty could figure out how to deal with them. Many council members agreed. The vote was set for the next day. Ambassador Dai-Ho Kim was summoned to an emergency meeting. Velkanos delivered the news. The sovereignty had learned the truth about humanity. They were terrified. Velkanos gave Dai-Ho one chance to explain. Why should the galaxy trust predators? Why should they believe humans would not eventually turn violent? What could humanity say to change the council's mind? Dai-Ho knew this was humanity's last chance. He could not do this alone. He called for help. Dr. Seojin Yoon came from the veterinary hospital. Farmer Jiwon Park came with his dog Storm. Dr. Boyoung Shin, an animal behavior expert, joined them. Together, they would try to save humanity's future. The presentation took place in the main council chamber. Thousands of aliens watched, either in person or through video feeds. This would determine humanity's fate. Dr. Boyoung spoke first. She explained how domestication worked. It was not about control or dominance. It was about partnership. Ancient humans did not capture wolves and force them to obey. Instead, some wolves chose to live near human camps. They ate food scraps and warned humans about dangers. In return, humans protected them and shared food. Over thousands of years, both species changed. The wolves became dogs. They became gentler, more social, better at reading human emotions. Humans became better at caring for animals, at understanding non-human minds. It was evolution driven by friendship, not force. Then Jiwan stepped forward with Storm. He asked the council to watch carefully. He was going to demonstrate the bond between human and dog. Small robots rolled into the chamber. They were designed to look like prey animals. The council tensed, expecting Storm to attack them. Storm ignored the robots completely. She sat beside Jiwan, looking up at him with complete trust. Her tail wagged slowly. Jiwan told Storm to stay. Then he walked to the other side of the room. Storm trembled, clearly wanting to follow him, but she stayed in place. She chose to obey, even though it was hard. When Jiwan called her name, Storm ran to him with such joy that several council members flinched. But there was no violence, only happiness. The dog jumped up and licked Jiwan's face while he hugged her. This was the point Daeho needed to make. Storm could attack. She could run away. She could ignore Jiwan's commands. But she chose not to. She chose to stay with the person she loved. Dr. Seojin spoke next. She talked about her work at the hospital. She had seen humans cry over dying pets. She had seen people spend their life savings to save a sick cat. She had seen the love between species. Humans were predators, yes, but they were also capable of deep empathy. They cared for creatures that could not help them. They protected animals weaker than themselves. They had channeled their predator nature into something positive. The council listened in silence. Some looked thoughtful, others still looked afraid. Then Naxala stood up. She was security chief of the research team. Everyone knew she had been the most frightened of humans at the start. She said her species, the Dreth, had been hunted almost to extinction. Every instinct she had told her to fear predators. When she first saw Bora, she wanted to run away screaming, but then she watched humans interact with their pets. She saw young Hana sleep peacefully with Taiyang guarding her. She saw Yunwoo cry when one of his old farm dogs died. She saw Dr. Yoon work 20 hours straight to save a cat. Humans were predators, but they chose to be protectors. They chose to be friends. They chose peace when violence would be easier. That choice, Naxala said, came from true strength, not from weakness or fear, but from power controlled by compassion. The council debated for hours after the presentation ended. Some were convinced. Others remained fearful. The vote would be close. In the end, 31 species voted for quarantine. 12 voted against. Humanity would be isolated from the galaxy for 500 years minimum. Daeho felt like he had been punched in the stomach. They had failed. Humanity would be alone. Belcanos delivered the verdict formally. Humans had 30 days to evacuate all personnel from beyond their borders. After that, any human ship leaving their zone would be destroyed. The meeting ended. The aliens left. The humans sat in the empty chamber, processing what had just happened. Jiwan held Storm close. The dog sensed his sadness and licked his hand gently. They had shown the galaxy humanity's best qualities, and the galaxy had rejected them anyway. But none of them knew that everything was about to change. War was coming, and the sovereignty would soon learn exactly what human predators could do when their friends were in danger. The quarantine started exactly as planned. Human ships returned to their territory. The sovereignty built sensor stations along the border. Any human vessel that crossed would be destroyed immediately. Humanity prepared to be alone for 500 years. They were angry and hurt, but they accepted the decision. There was nothing else they could do. Then the sensors detected something massive approaching from beyond the galactic rim. The Caliph had returned. 3,000 years ago, the Caliph had nearly destroyed the sovereignty. They were a hive-mind species made of silicon rather than carbon. They saw organic life as resources to harvest and consume. The war had lasted 2 centuries. Billions died. Entire species went extinct. Finally, the sovereignty pushed the Caliph back beyond the rim through overwhelming numbers and desperate sacrifice. The Caliph were never truly defeated. They retreated to rebuild and improve. Now they returned with better ships, better weapons, and better tactics. The first attacks were devastating. The Caliph used swarm tactics that the sovereignty could not counter. Their ships moved in coordinated groups, overwhelming defensive positions through sheer numbers. Within 3 weeks, 7 outer colonies fell. The sovereignty military scrambled to respond, but their defensive doctrine was failing. They tried to protect every world at once, spreading their forces too thin. War coordinator Thraxus mobilized every available ship. But the Caliph had learned from their previous defeat. They concentrated their attacks on strategic targets while the sovereignty wasted resources defending empty space. The Thek homeworld was sterilized. The Ken Collective lost 3 of their 7 hive nexuses. The supposedly impregnable Mekron fortress world of Kerados fell in 36 hours. Panic spread through sovereignty space. Refugees fled the advancing Caliph front. Governments collapsed. The carefully maintained order of 12,000 years crumbled in weeks. Ambassador Daeho Kim watched the news reports from Earth. His heart broke for the species that had rejected humanity. They were dying, and there was nothing he could do about it. The quarantine prevented any contact. Then Admiral Jae-kyung Hwang walked into his office. The Admiral commanded Earth's combined fleet. He had a simple question. Should they help? Daeho was shocked. The sovereignty had isolated humanity. They had called humans dangerous. They had voted to keep them locked away for 500 years. Why would humans help them? Admiral Hwang's answer was simple. Because it was the right thing to do. Because neighbors help neighbors. Because humans did not abandon people in need, even if those people had treated them badly. Daeho sent a message to the Sovereignty Council. Humanity offered full military support against the Caliph. Every ship, every soldier, every resource. No payment required, no conditions attached. The council debated for hours. Some worried this was a trick. Others argued that the quarantine must be maintained regardless. But worlds were falling every day. They had no choice. Velkanos cast the deciding vote. They would accept human help. The human fleet arrived at the besieged world of Thakaris 3 days later. The planet was a major shipyard, critical to the sovereignty's war effort. If it fell, the Caliph would control the entire sector. The sovereignty commanders watched the human fleet with curiosity. The ships were smaller than expected, less heavily armed. They wondered if humanity could really make a difference. Then the battle started, and they understood. Human ships fought nothing like sovereignty vessels. Where the sovereignty maintained defensive formations, human ships broke apart into small groups. They moved aggressively, diving through enemy swarms to strike at command ships. They took damage that would make sovereignty crews retreat. They kept fighting when logic said they should withdraw. They coordinated attacks through instinct as much as communication. They fought like predators, because that is what they were. Admiral Hwang coordinated with the sovereignty forces, but he used human tactics. Instead of meeting the Caliph head-on, he lured parts of their fleet into traps. Human fighters conducted precision strikes on Caliph command ships, disrupting their hive coordination. The battle raged for 18 hours. Human casualties were brutal. 42% of the fleet was destroyed or damaged, but they never broke formation. They never retreated. Commander Naeun Shin, captain of the UHSS Defiance, fought even after her ship lost weapons. When the engines failed, she used the last of her maneuvering thrusters to ram a Caliph capital ship. Her sacrifice created an opening that allowed sovereignty forces to destroy 3 more enemy vessels. Finally, after 18 hours of continuous combat, the Caliph fleet broke off and retreated. It was the first time in the war they had been forced to withdraw. Thakaris was saved. The cost was terrible, but the sovereignty now understood what humans brought to the fight. Persistence, aggression, the willingness to make hard choices and see them through. Velkanos visited Admiral Hwang after the battle. The human admiral was exhausted, covered in bruises from his command chair when the ship had taken hits, but he was already planning the next operation. Velkanos asked why humans had come. Why risk everything for people who had rejected them? Admiral Hwang looked at him with tired eyes. He said that humans understood what it meant to be afraid. They knew what it was like to face extinction. But they also knew that running away never solved anything. The galaxy was big enough for everyone. Prey species, predator species, all kinds, but only if they worked together. The war continued. More battles. More losses. But now the sovereignty had hope. The Caliph were not unstoppable. Human tactics could counter their swarms. Predator thinking could defeat their strategies. The sovereignty established a joint military command. War Coordinator Thraxus worked alongside Admiral Huang, despite their completely different approaches to warfare. It was difficult at first. Prey species and predator species thinking often clashed, but slowly they learned from each other. Sovereignty forces became more aggressive. Human forces learned better defensive positioning. Together they created something new, something stronger than either could achieve alone. Lieutenant Yun Seo Kang ran training programs for sovereignty officers. She taught them how to think like predators. Not to become predators, but to understand how aggression and persistence could win battles. The Caliph adapted too. They began setting traps specifically for human ships. They focused fire on human vessels, knowing these were the most dangerous threats. A major defeat occurred at Zelnar Colony, when Caliph forces ambushed a human battle group. Captain Sung-Ho Lee and his entire crew were lost. The UHSS Perseverance and 4 escort ships were destroyed. The sovereignty feared humans would withdraw after such losses. Instead, more human ships arrived from Earth and the colonies. More volunteers joined. The human response to setback was not retreat. It was escalation. This was persistence hunting applied to warfare. Humans would keep coming, keep fighting, keep pushing forward until the enemy broke. During a rare break in combat, something unexpected happened. Sovereignty personnel started visiting human ships, not for military briefings, but out of curiosity. They wanted to understand these strange predators who fought beside them. Naxala led the first cultural exchange. She brought Dreth officers to the UHSS Harmony. They were amazed to discover humans still kept pets even on warships. Medical officer Soman An had a cat named Whiskers. The cat provided emotional support to stressed crew members. Fighter pilot Kang Min. O kept photos of his dogs on his console for good luck. The sovereignty visitors began to understand. Humans did not separate their predatory nature from their capacity for love. These traits existed together. The same instincts that made them dangerous made them fiercely protective of those they cared about. They fought so hard because they were fighting for their friends. And the sovereignty had become their friends, whether they realized it or not. Intelligence reports identified the location of the Caliph Central Command Nexus. It was hidden in a stellar nursery beyond the rim. Destroying it would not end the war immediately, but it would fracture the Caliph's coordination. The mission was essentially suicide. The Nexus was heavily defended and surrounded by radiation that would disable most ships, but someone had to try. Admiral Huang volunteered the human fleet for the assault. When asked why humans should take this risk, his answer was simple. Because that is what friends do. The assault fleet gathered at the edge of the stellar nursery. 200 ships. Half human, half sovereignty. Every crew member knew this might be their last mission. Admiral Huang stood on the bridge of the UHSS Indomitable. His ship had survived 12 major battles. The hull was covered in scars from Caliph weapons, but she was still flying. Beside the human fleet, War Coordinator Thraxus commanded the sovereignty forces. Just months ago, he had wanted to quarantine humanity. Now he trusted them with his life. The fleet jumped into the stellar nursery. Immediately, sensors went haywire. Radiation from forming stars interfered with everything. Navigation became difficult. Communication was spotty. The Caliph were waiting. Thousands of ships surrounded the Nexus. They had known someone would eventually find this place. They were ready. The battle began instantly. Caliph swarms attacked from all directions. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes against the backdrop of newborn stars. The radiation made shields less effective. Every hit did more damage than normal. Human ships used their aggressive tactics, diving through Caliph formations to strike at key targets. Sovereignty ships provided covering fire, their heavy weapons tearing through enemy swarms. Captain Min Seok Ryu led a strike force of human frigates directly into the heart of the Caliph defenses. His mission was simple but deadly. Draw the enemy's attention away from the main assault force. His ships took devastating fire. One by one they fell, but they kept fighting, kept drawing the Caliph away from the Nexus, kept making the enemy focus on them instead of the real threat. The main force pushed through. Sovereignty dreadnoughts led the way, their massive shields absorbing incredible punishment. Human destroyers followed close behind. targeting any Kalith ship that tried to flank the dreadnoughts. Admiral Huang coordinated the assault. His ship shook from repeated impacts. Warning lights flashed across every console. The crew worked frantically to keep systems operational. They reached the Nexus. The structure was enormous, larger than any space station ever built. Its shields were still intact. Conventional weapons could not penetrate them. Admiral Huang made a decision. The Indomitable was already heavily damaged. Life support was failing in multiple sections. The engines were working at 30% capacity. They would not survive much longer anyway. He ordered his crew to evacuate to nearby ships. Most of them refused. They had fought beside him for years. If he was staying, they were staying too. The Indomitable turned toward the Nexus. Admiral Huang prepared to ram his ship into the structure. It was the only way to break through the shields, then space tore open. A massive dimensional fold appeared. Through it came the rest of the Sovereignty fleet. Every available ship, led by Velkanos himself aboard a Valthorian dreadnought. They had risked everything to reach this place. Traveled through unstable space, pushed their ships beyond safe limits, all to support their human allies. Velkanos opened communication with Admiral Huang. He said humans had shown the Sovereignty what friendship meant. Now it was time to return the favor. The combined fleet synchronized their weapons, Sovereignty and human technology working together. They had learned so much from each other during the war. Prey species caution combined with predator species aggression. The barrage hit the Nexus from every direction simultaneously. The shields flickered, cracked, finally shattered. Without shields, the Nexus was vulnerable. Human fighters swept in, targeting critical systems. Sovereignty dreadnoughts fired their main weapons. The structure began to break apart. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. The Kalith Nexus, the heart of their invasion fleet, was destroyed. Immediately, the Kalith forces began to falter. Without central coordination, their swarms became confused. Ships stopped working together. The hive mind had been broken. The Allied fleet withdrew from the stellar nursery. They had lost 37 ships, thousands of crew members, but they had won. The war continued for 8 more months, but the Kalith never recovered from losing their Nexus. Slowly, systematically, they were pushed back beyond the rim. This time, the Sovereignty established permanent defensive stations to prevent their return. The cost of the war was terrible. 13 Sovereignty worlds lost, billions dead, entire species reduced to remnants. But they had survived, and they had learned. 1 year after the final battle, the Galactic Sovereignty held a special session. The topic was humanity's place in the galaxy. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would not be quarantined. Instead, they would be given a full seat on the Sovereignty Council, equal partners in governing the galaxy. More than that, the Sovereignty began massive reforms. They recognized that their prey species thinking had made them vulnerable. They needed predator perspectives to balance their caution. Human tactical doctrine was incorporated into Sovereignty military training. Not to make prey species into predators, but to help them understand different approaches to problems. Velkanos visited Earth for the first time. He attended a memorial ceremony for the human casualties of the war. He watched families mourn their dead with both grief and pride. He saw young Hana Kim, now older, placing flowers at a memorial wall. Her therapy dog Taiyang sat quietly beside her, providing comfort as he always did. That evening, Ambassador Deho invited Velkanos to dinner at his home, the same home where this all began, where the research delegation had first seen humans living with predators. Bora was there. The golden retriever was older now, with gray around her muzzle, but her tail still wagged when she saw visitors. She walked up to Velkanos and sat politely, waiting to be petted. Velkanos reached out slowly. His hand touched Bora's soft fur. The dog leaned into his touch, eyes closing with happiness. In that moment, Velkanos finally understood. Predators were not just dangerous. They could be gentle. They could be loyal. They could be friends. The same nature that made humans effective warriors also made them protective of those they loved. They had fought so hard for the Sovereignty because that is what predators do. They protect their pack, and the Sovereignty had become part of humanity's pack. Ambassador Deho Kim took his seat on the Sovereignty Council 3 months later. Next to his nameplate, the other delegates insisted on placing a hologram. It showed Bora, tail wagging, completely happy. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Diversity was strength. Prey species brought careful planning and patience. Predator species brought decisive action and persistence. Together they could face any threat. Naxala, now promoted to Sovereignty Security Director, created a new program. Its goal was to find other potential predator species in unexplored space. Not to fear them or isolate them, but to welcome them before crisis forced the issue. Everyone called it Bora's Protocol. The dog who accidentally changed the galaxy became its symbol of unity. Across human space and throughout the sovereignty, something new began. Families of different species started adopting pets, carefully at first, with proper training and education. But it happened. A Dreth family adopted a small dog. A Thek researcher kept a cat in her laboratory. Slowly, the galaxy learned what humans had known for thousands of years. Predators were not just dangerous. They could be family. Years later, a reporter asked Velkanos about the moment everything changed. When did he stop fearing humans and start trusting them? Velkanos thought carefully before answering. He said the sovereignty had ruled galaxies for 12,000 years. They thought they understood everything about civilization and culture. Then they saw what humans kept as pets. And they realized they understood nothing about strength, loyalty, or love. Humans taught them that the most dangerous predator in the universe is one that chooses peace, because that choice comes from genuine power, not from fear. A predator that chooses to be gentle is stronger than any weapon. A predator that chooses to protect is more valuable than any army. A predator that chooses to love is the most powerful force in the galaxy. And it all started with a golden retriever named Bora, who just wanted to